Hello and welcome to the Two Ace Podcast, the podcast designed to help you manifest your Two Ace mindset. My name is Josh Brooks and my one focus is success through the art of discipline and flow. I hope you enjoy the episode. Now let's get right into it. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is you're joining me. I hope you're having a good one. And today I'm joined by Jeff Patterson, who is a meditation practitioner. And Jeff, it's lovely to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Cool, yeah. Would you like to just provide some context about why you're here, what you're doing?
Yeah, so I've been teaching the martial and meditative arts now for about 30 years. I've been running an academy here in Portland, Oregon. And through the years, I've had over 26,000 students come through my academy. And one of the things that I've noticed that has inspired my passion in the meditative arts is that the people that are drawn to the practice have had many life-changing experiences by incorporating the meditative arts into their life, which is what's motivated me to write my last couple books, my latest book, The Yielding Warrior, and then also create my online program and my teacher training program, because I just want to get the message out there of how the meditative arts can positively influence your life and how much value is really there. And that's kind of been my main motivation and inspiration for a fair amount of my life and my career.
Cool. Yeah, nice one. I'd like to just start by if you can answer your own question there. So how does the meditative arts sort of relate to life? How can people use it in their day-to-day life and, work on themselves through it?
You know, there's so many different benefits from incorporating meditation into your life. I break down meditation into kind of 5 paths or categories that you can do with studying the practice. And the first one is more the athletic side of the training, where people are turning to the arts to improve their athletic performance. And this is great for any kind of sport that you're in, for the combat sports, for whatever it is. And you'll find that these days so many professional athletes are turning to meditation to help improve their performance. And at that level, at those elite levels, even if it helps you 2-3% of your game improve, that's a huge change. And so a lot of sports and activity is mindset and being able to control your thoughts and direct them and be able to be centered. And so the meditative arts, there's nothing better to help you with that element of the game. Then there's the therapeutic path, and this is to help with our overall strength and flexibility and learning how to strengthen our weaknesses so we can stay stronger and healthier through life. And then the next one is the medical side of the practice. And all of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory. So it comes from these meditation philosophies. So this is a very deep side of the practice. And then we have the philosophical side, which talks about life virtues and different ways to incorporate these strategies into how we see things in our life. And then lastly, there's the spiritual side of the practice, which involves finding that peace of mind and being centered and being a little bit more present in what we're doing. And so any one of those paths somebody could come to the practice for. And as you do that, you would integrate and incorporate different elements of the meditative arts into your practice. And when I talk about the meditative arts, a lot of people think of meditation as sitting and thinking about your breath. And while that is meditation, there's many different directions in meditation. There's movement practices, there's sitting meditation, standing meditation, there's internal energetic work, there's breath work. There's so many different things that we can incorporate into our meditation practice. And so having a good understanding of this is beneficial when starting the practice.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like meditation is more of like a lifestyle change rather than something that you sit down and do. Like, yes, you can set and invest time aside to meditate, to sit, to breathe, to sit in silence, whatever. But it's sort of a lifestyle change and setting yourself up to create more of like space in your mind to think and be meditative about it. And you also mentioned sort of the small improvements, and you mentioned Chinese philosophy, but that sort of reminded me of the Japanese strategy, the Kaizen philosophy. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, what does that? What do you think of that? How does that entail with your with your ongoings? Like, how do you use that?
You know, I think a lot of the meditative arts have similar philosophies, and they're all working on kind of different elements and characteristics of our our body, our mind, our spirit. And you know, I break down the core fundamental foundations in any meditative practice. It doesn't matter what it is that you're doing, into what I call the five regulations. And within the five regulations, we have regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And briefly, I'll talk about what all of these directions are. So, when we talk about regulating the body, this basically is referring to our skeletal alignment, our muscular tension in the body, and how it affects us. So, for example, if you could think about a time, maybe you're sitting down at your computer for 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward and you're feeling depleted, maybe your neck's getting sore, and then think about another time when the most important person in your world walks into the room and your body perks up and you're feeling like you're on top of the world. Well, we're in control of these two different energies 100% of the time, every day. And the question I have for those of you listening is, how much of your time are you choosing to be in that depleted state or that energetic state? Because we can control that. And so the first regulation in any meditation practice is, how do we monitor that all day, every day, in all of our activities? And as you mentioned earlier, you know, the meditative arts is meant to be a way of life and a lot less of a hobby that we do once in a while. And when we can integrate these practices into our life, that's where all the true value of the practice is. Then the next regulation is regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is a very deep idea, and it's something that if you get into the meditative arts, you'll be studying for the rest of your life. You know, they often refer to Qigong as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. And because they're so complex and so many different directions we can take this, we broadly categorize them into the yin methods and the yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style meditations. An example of a yin breath would be, if you've ever had to or got the opportunity to pay attention and listen to somebody sleeping, you'll notice that their breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing our conscious mind into our subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to emulate this style of energy with our meditations, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale to help bring that energy inward, which is great for stress reduction, for dealing with anxiety, for improving our focus. I mean, there's so many applications to this side of the breath. Then we have the yang side of the breath and the yang breathing strategies. These are more aggressive. An example of this would be, if you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to focus on that exhale, maybe put tension in the breath, make the breath audible, and this helps generate energy and bring it outward. Now, when we start understanding how to use the breath as a strategy, and in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the kan and li, or the water and fire. This teaches us how to use the breath to adjust our physical, mental, and emotional outcomes. You know, we all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when we see things start to get in that excited state, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring that energy down, and we feel ourselves starting to be depleted. We can use the yang side of the breath to help pick that up. And when you can start understanding how to use this strategy in your life and in everything you do, it's another tool we have to find that balance and to maintain that consistency throughout the day and try to avoid being on that roller coaster ride. Then the next regulation is regulating the mind. And regulating the mind is a lifelong practice and something that we're all working with. One of the most common things I hear people say that come to the meditative arts, which is kind of funny, is that they tried meditation and it just didn't work for them. They couldn't quiet their minds. And somewhere along the way, people got this misconception that in order to be successful and to do meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana and let all your thoughts go away and have no distractions. And I've been studying the meditative arts now for 36 years. I've traveled around the world many times and trained with some amazing meditation practitioners. I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. We all get distracted. It's the way of humanity, and so when you can make this realization, you understand that you're not failing with the practice. That's just part of the process. Now, when you're meditating, if you can notice these distractions, say you're sitting for 20 minutes or doing a movement practice for 20 minutes, you may get distracted 50 times. Of those 50 times, we recognize the distraction, and then we use our posture, our breath, the movement, if it's a movement practice, to help bring us back to focus. And now, because we're doing this every day, every month, every year, we develop this power to recognize these imbalances and bring ourselves back to focus and spend a lot less time on those distractions. I read somewhere once that, the average person has about 80 to 90,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had yesterday. And because we get so distracted and so caught up in these things, we build these habits and do the same thing over and over and over again. And I also have read that 80% to 90%, depending on the person, of the thoughts that you have are negative. And if we don't learn to recognize these negative thoughts and change them at the first sign of imbalance, it can take over our lives. There's a story that I really love about these two older monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and it's muddy everywhere. And they come up to this huge mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk, he yells across the puddle, and he says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so he rolls up his pant legs, and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, and sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles excuse me, a couple miles down the road, and the younger monk is just furious, and he says, we're not supposed to touch girls, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down at him and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we get 2 miles down the muddy road before we finally learn how to let something go? And so having the ability to recognize these imbalances and not take it 2 miles down the muddy road is a real important part of the practice and learning how to control and regulate the mind. Then we have regulating the energy. And regulating the energy is a very deep topic and something that we could literally talk about for hours. But the basic idea of regulating the energy is once you have reached a competent level in regulating the body, regulating the breath, and regulating the mind, you have the tools to regulate the energy in the body. And we will lead this energy through different circulations for bringing it inward, for extending it outward, and doing this to get different outcomes with our meditation practice. And then lastly, the fifth regulation is regulating the spirit. And regulating the spirit is a very profound idea, and it's something that meditation practitioners will spend their entire life working towards that stage of enlightenment. But when you understand these 5 regulations and integrate them as the foundation of your meditation practice into your life, you can see how easy it can affect and change for the positive everything you do. The Dalai Lama once said that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. And I love that saying in that it's so important to integrate these concepts into your life. It's just endless the amount of benefits you can get from them.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that was really really well put. I like the idea of the five concepts there. So it's really interesting to think about that. So, is it are they sort of tiered, or are they sort of things you can do all at once, or do you have to do it one by one to fully understand what's what?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that you can start to integrate them simultaneously. However, in the beginning, one of the first things we like to get beginning students to focus on is the body regulation because it's the easiest one to change. For a focused effort, if you're doing that for 2 or 3 months, you can make a huge change in your body awareness and how you're holding yourself throughout the day. And you'll see a lot of energetic changes just from this one regulation. And so we usually start there, but a lot of times we'll start there in unison with the breath work and with the mental side of the training and kind of put them all together.
All right, okay. Yeah, interesting. It's yeah, it's definitely important to start with the body, I reckon. It's like you said, it's the easiest one to start with because, it's the most physical. I guess it's the most easily understood. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's easy to make small adjustments and understand why, right? You tell
Mm.
somebody to like do these 20 different breathing strategies, and it takes a while to really feel the sensitivity and understand what they're doing and the energetic principles behind them. Where when you tell somebody not to sit like this, it's easy to see the benefits of that. And so it's just a little bit, I think, simpler to integrate into your everyday life.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned that there's three types of meditation. There's ritual, active, and philosophical, right? Would you like to just go into a bit more detail about them?
Yeah, so ritual, active, and philosophical practices are kind of what I call the three pillars that you have in any meditation practice. And they're things that we want to integrate as we start to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. In ritual practices, what I mean by that is if you have a practice, whether it's a sitting meditation, a standing meditation, a movement practice like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga or whatever that is, you set time aside every day, and this is kind of like the core of your practice, the root of everything, and you have this be part of your consistent training. Every time somebody new comes into the academy, I always tell them, you want to have a 20-minute a day ritual, integrate some active practices and some philosophical practices. And of the people that do this every day and they stick to it for at least a year, they'll see so many benefits that 98% of them will do this practice for the rest of their life because they would be crazy to stop because they see so many benefits from it. And it all originates from that ritual practice. Then we have active practices, and active practices are a great tool because remember, meditation is meant to be a way of life and a lot less of a hobby. And these active practices allow us to integrate these concepts and these sensitivities and this heightened awareness into everything you do all day, every day. And the great thing about these practices is that they can be done in 60 seconds and 2 minutes. They don't need to take a lot of time. It's not like you need to retire to a cave and meditate for the rest of your life. You integrate these things into your daily activities when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. And they could be as simple as counting out 10 breaths or maybe doing some spinal rotations or a simple movement practice. And as you start to do these things and use these regulations in everything you do, and you make it get to the point where you're regulating without regulating, now it starts to become a way of life. And it also, when you start to see these benefits and see how valuable this stuff is, now you move from thinking, oh, I've got to do my meditation today, to I get to do my meditation. I'm getting so much value from this. And when you can make that mental shift, your whole life will change, because this is not a chore that you have to do. This is something that you get to do that will influence everything you do in life and make everything better. And then lastly, we have the philosophical practices. And philosophical practices can be used in either ritual or active based meditations. And they're things that we integrate into what we do that work on virtue and being able to see things from different angles. And again, this is part of your life journey and practice with meditation.
Yeah. And you mentioned just then your life journey of meditation. So how or at what point in your life did you make the mental shift of, oh, you have to do the meditation to you get to do the meditation? Like, was there a significant point where you were just like, oh wait, this is my life now? Like, how did you come across it?
Yeah. You know, I got introduced to the meditative arts in a bit of a roundabout way. I was about 19 years old. I was very into Western boxing, and I had no desire to meditate. I had no desire to do Tai Chi, Qigong. I wasn't interested at all. I used to go to a boxing gym just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. And at a boxing gym, for those of you that aren't familiar with kind of how they're run, it's a lot different than your traditional style fitness class where you go in and there's a teacher and everybody kind of follows what the teacher's saying. In an old school boxing gym, there might be 4 or 5 coaches in there, and each one of those coaches might have 3 or 4 fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one gym I was at, one of the coaches was a very well known coach. He had worked with national and world champion level fighters, and I really wanted to get to spend some time with him. So I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and work hard and let him know that I wanted to train with him. And, I followed him around for about 3 or 4 months. And finally, he started helping me out and giving me some tips and working with me. And it was only about 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he told me that if I wanted to be a better boxer, that I should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I'm this 19-year-old kid who didn't really know much about anything, thinking, isn't that for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And, I had a ton of respect for this guy. I knew he was trying to help me. And so I took on the practice. And he showed me the first couple movements of a Tai Chi form. And he was having me every day sit for a half an hour meditation and do a half an hour of the Tai Chi work. Now, everything this guy gave me, I treated like it was gold. So while he wanted me to do an hour every day, I was actually doing an hour and a half because I wanted to do a little bit more and just impress him and let him know that I was working hard. And so I started doing this practice every day. Like I said, he showed me the first few movements in the first couple weeks, and then he never showed me anything else for about 4 or 5 months go by. And I'm starting to get a little discouraged, thinking, man, is this guy ever going to show me anything? Why am I doing this? I don't understand it. It's not working for me. I'm having difficulty with it. And I'm sure that when I went to, because I was still going to the boxing gym 5, 6 days a week at this point, and the last thing I wanted to do was to go to the gym and have him ask me how my meditation practice was today and have to tell him I didn't do it. So I did it every day religiously, like you brush your teeth. And at one point, it might have been around the 7 or 8 month mark, I went down to my basement to do my meditation practice. I started doing the practice. I looked up at the clock, and an hour and a half had gone by, and it felt like 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And I was like, what just happened? I mean, it was amazing feeling that I had. It was almost euphoric. And I got to make that happen again. And from that point, that was kind of the turning point for me, where it went from, hey, this is a chore I've got to do because I told this guy I'd do it, to I get to do this. This is pretty cool stuff. Let's see what this is about. And it wasn't too long after that my main focus shifted from being in boxing. I still did that, and I still actually practice it and coach it today, but it shifted from be my main focus to the meditative arts. And ever since that point, I've been, spending my whole career traveling around training with as many, high level meditation practitioners as I can find, and really investigating that and realizing it is an extremely deep topic. I've been studying it for 36 years, and I'm still just a student learning all the time, and that's what kind of keeps it fun and inspiring for me, is that there's really so much there to get into.
For sure, yeah. It's really interesting listening to how you went from boxing to the other martial arts, and you mentioned the was it Tai Chi and Qigong?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like to just explain to the viewers and myself a bit more about those two martial arts as compared to boxing?
Yeah, so Qigong is a meditative practice. And within the Qigong, it's a very deep practice. It has different directions, from kind of more the physical element, the spiritual element, the philosophical element. There's different ways that you can incorporate these practices. And in Qigong, there's sitting meditation, standing meditation, there's form work that works with different energies and organs in the body. All of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory, and so they're very close related. And so it's a very deep topic. The Tai Chi, however, was originally created as a martial art, and it used to be, the armies would train and they'd use it for learning how to use weapons and fight. And at one point, it got to where they noticed that doing all this hard style training was causing a lot of injuries, and the people were unhealthy. And so a guy named Buddha Dambo came over from India, and he started integrating more of the health aspect. And this is where we started influencing Tai Chi with the Qigong methodology. And now, if you walk around and go to, visit all of the Tai Chi academies in the States, you would find that maybe 5% at best would even have any idea how to apply the martial side of the training of Tai Chi. Most people do it now for the health benefits. And so as you learn Tai Chi these days, oftentimes you're intertwining the Qigong philosophy and the Qigong benefits within the Tai Chi training. And that's kind of like the main two differences between the two.
Ah, okay. I'm interested in how you view other martial arts as well. Like you mentioned, or we mentioned before we hit play, is you mentioned you do jiu-jitsu as well. So how do you how do you see all these different martial arts integrating into day-to-day life, and how do you like use the different aspects or the different sort of philosophies from each discipline to sort of push forward?
Yeah, I've been a avid student of martial arts my whole life, and here at the academy, we have four adult programs. We have our
Okay.
meditation program, we have our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program, we have our striking program, which is boxing and Muay Thai, and then we have our JKD and Eskrima program. And the philosophies, there's a lot of similar philosophies in the martial arts. My most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, talks about a concept of yielding, which is something I've been passionate about for years, and it's used in both the meditative arts and the martial arts. And yielding, I break down how to use yielding in pretty much every area of your life. And I break it down into three pillars. We have the physical side of yielding, the mental side, and the emotional side. Physical yielding is the easiest one to understand, and it's the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. Now, it's obvious how this is helpful in athletics or martial arts, because many times in any form of sport, we come up against athletes who are bigger and stronger than us. And if we don't learn how to deal with that force and try to meet it head on, they're going to overpower us, and we're going to lose that scenario. And so this has been used for sport and martial arts for generations. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, doing this under pressure is a difficult feat and a lifetime practice and something that, takes years to master. However, from day one, by integrating the meditative arts into your life, you start seeing these things more clearly inside yourself, which gives you the power to learn how to not only be aware of them, but also see these things more clearly in other people, which now we're kind of moving into what I call mental yielding. So, say, for example, you and I are having a conversation, and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from the start. It's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. And so, learning how to use yielding in all of your interactions is extremely powerful. One, you're being more considerate, which is something we could all do more of anyway. And two, it allows you to be strategic so you can guide any conversation or interaction to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. This is great for our personal relationships, for business, for sales, for negotiations. Having these skills really help us learn how to recognize these things that as they come up and guide them to the direction we want with the least amount of resistance. Then the last pillar of yielding I have is called emotional yielding. Emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with your own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes things will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding and our ability to be more present and aware by incorporating these meditation practices into our life, oftentimes we can step back and think about things when they happen and be more present and less emotional and make a more educated choice that a lot of times can save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And so learning how to use these skills of yielding in every area of your life is extremely powerful skill set, and I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years. I've been running this academy for 30 years now. And one of the most common things I hear people say is, that makes a lot of sense. I use yielding all the time. And while I would agree in that I think everybody uses some degree of yielding all the time, it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe most people will go through their lives and never have any clue of unless they integrate these practices into their life.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important to be present and to understand that, the past and the future are sort of irrelevant when all that matters is the current moment. And I feel like in sort of today's society, especially with all the distraction about, with social media, with sort of the instant access to the world in a way, you can just Google one thing and you have a million different answers. So much distraction nowadays. It's easy to be distracted. It's easy to think of what's just happened or what's going to happen. And I feel like a lot of people, especially maybe my generation, are sort of very not present in a way. And I think that'd be important to, I think it's important for people to train to be present and train and understand how to do it properly. So in that case, how would you recommend or sort of instruct people that, maybe people that are suffering from anxiety, depression, the clinging of the past, the clinging of the future, how would you guide them to let go and be more present?
A lot of people are turned to the meditative arts because they're dealing with anxiety, panic attacks, and they have depression or whatever they're suffering from. And one of the
Yeah,
great
definitely.
things one of the great things about meditation that helps us is that it gives us the tools to not get taken too far down those paths. When you start noticing an imbalance, What is your physiology doing? What is your breath doing? What are your thoughts doing? And we know how to regulate these. We can turn those things around. Now, the most important thing is, especially for those people that have that problem, is you've got to integrate this stuff and make it part of your life, because you can't say, okay, I'm having a panic attack. Okay, now it's time to meditate. You've got to be able to build that awareness and that resiliency in your life so you can see these things. It's kind of like if I'm standing up on the mountainside and I drop a pebble, it's easy to bend over and pick it up. But if that pebble rolls down the hill and starts an avalanche, it's hard to stop the avalanche.
Yeah.
We do that in our minds all the time. By incorporating these meditation practices, it teaches us how to regulate things and control them before they get too far off track. And that's kind of one of the ways that it can help us with these problems. Now, when somebody new comes to the practice, I always have kind of three things that I like them to consider and to really try to put some thought into, because I bet for every person that practices meditation every day, there's probably 20 that tried it and quit. And so it's so important when you're thinking about taking on a meditation practice is to really spend some time and think about, why do I want to do this practice? Do I want to stay healthy into old age so I'm mobile and can be active and watch my grandkids grow up? Or do I want to learn how to deal with stress and anxiety and panic attacks? Or do I want to improve my performance on the field and my creativity? Whatever that is for you, really put some thought into that, because I guarantee you, no matter who you are, maybe it's tomorrow, next week, next year, there's going to be a time where your alarm's going to go off in the morning. It's time to get up and meditate, and you're going to be, I'll hit the snooze button, I'll do it tomorrow. But if you have a strong why and you change your mindset and you start looking at this like something you get to do, it's going to be easy to get up every day and do this. And the next thing is that consistency. We talked about that, and that if you are consistent, you start to build this discipline, this integrity, this perseverance, and these qualities that come from that consistent practice, they feed over into every element of your life, whether it's your relationships, your work, your hobbies, anything you do. And so having that reason and that why gives us the energy to stay consistent. And that consistency is where it leads over into all the benefits of the practice. And then lastly, the third thing that you need to do is you need to find a guide. There are, for years I've been teaching, and I've had students come to the academy that have been self-taught, and they've been doing meditation for 10 years, 15 years, even 20 years. And they'll come to the academy and they'll see a student who's only been here 6 months or 12 months, and they'll get a little discouraged, because here's this person that's been in the practice for a very short amount of time, and they're deeper into the practice than they've been after 15 years. And today's society, it's so easy to get distracted. You could go to YouTube and find a million videos on this practice and that practice, and you've got a whole list of books out there. And if you don't have somebody helping you find the correct path to follow on and integrate the practices that help you along that path, you can waste a lot of time, and your time is valuable. Life is short. We're not here on this planet for very long. And having somebody that can help you get to a competent level in the practice in 6 or 12 months is invaluable. And, I always tell people to think about, imagine if I take you to a basketball court and you've never witnessed the game of basketball. You don't even know you're supposed to dribble the ball. You don't know the ball's supposed to go in the hoop. And I give you a basketball and I say, go play basketball. You're going to be horrible. You're not going to know what to do. And if I take you to that same basketball court and I give you a world-class coach and I say, go train with this person for 6 months, you can accomplish a lot. Think about how good you're going to get. Now, meditation's no different. We've got to have that focus. And that focus, is so valuable in anything we do in life. And in today's society, It's so easy, like you said earlier, to get distracted. We've got our cell phones, we've got our computers, we've got work, we've got this advertisement, this thing. We're bombarded with all these things and we're connected to so many people that it's common to walk around with these barriers or these masks, if you will, because we're trying to protect ourselves from all of this stuff coming in, or maybe we don't want to say something that hurts somebody's feelings. And we start to live this way behind these masks, and we get so caught up in this that eventually we start to look at ourselves in the mirror and we're still wearing that mask. Meditation is one of those things that helps us take down these barriers and these masks and be more in tune with who we really are, which is invaluable in today's society.
Yeah, for sure. You've really eloquently put there. I really like the analogies you've used, especially the basketball one. It's really applicable in the majority of cases, right? And I want to talk about environment. So how do you view like nature and grounding in terms of this building this meditative lifestyle?
One of my old meditation teachers, he always used to tell me that you want to stay close to earth. And grounding is one of the benefits that comes from incorporating meditation into your life. If you're kind of scattered and not well grounded and somebody approaches you with a problem, you're going to respond to that problem a lot differently than if they approach you from that they come to you with a problem and you're centered and you're peaceful and you're in a positive place. If you're all over the place, imagine how sometimes somebody says something to you and you just come back in this aggressive point of view and maybe say something that you felt like, I shouldn't have said that. That happens all the time when we're not grounded. And so being able to live your life where you're more rooted and more grounded, more peaceful, is definitely one of the benefits of incorporating this practice in your life.
For sure. And for those people that aren't really sure what grounding is, would you like to just explain a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so it's kind of that centered state of being. Think about if you were standing in one position and you tighten up all of your muscles and you get really stiff in your body. I could walk by and push you over with my finger. But if you relax and you relax your joints and you sink and you feel yourself getting very heavy into your feet, it's going to be a lot harder to push you over. You're going to be a lot more centered. This is the same with our thoughts and emotions. If our emotions are tight and tense and have all these distractions going on and they're not relaxed and sinking into our mind and being in that peaceful place, it's easy to get unbalanced. And so that's kind of the idea behind being grounded is it's affects us physically, mentally, and emotionally. And when we can learn how to integrate that into our work life, our relationships, into our personal relationship with ourselves. You're walking down the street and, you're thinking 10 negative thoughts in a row. Think about how unbalanced you are. But if you're thinking about how grateful you are and how peaceful you are and how good it feels to just be walking down the street and smelling the fresh air, you're going to be a lot more easy to approach and say hello to and get a smile from you and that's kind of what we're looking for.
Definitely. You mentioned balance there, and I just triggered a thought that I heard the other day. So it's a quote, and it said like happiness happiness is a state of being balanced, and while you're growing, you're not going to be happy because you aren't balanced. Through growth, you suffer. No, you grow the most through suffering, which isn't a balanced state. So in effect, when you're not happy, you're growing even more. And through growth, you're trying to pursue something that you know that when you get there, if you get there, you won't be growing because it's a state. It's not a dynamic process like growth is. So, what are your sort of views on that statement?
So anytime we have a problem in our life, if we learn to deal with it in an effective manner, I agree. I think you can grow a lot from that. But what happens is a lot of people have something like that happen in their life, and it'll turn their whole life to the negative.
Mm,
So having these tools in your life and learning how to, again, coming back to recognizing these imbalances before they get too far down that path, we're able to approach whatever problem or whatever situation it is with a balanced, relaxed mindset that can help us grow from that. It's kind of like, I don't care, like I mentioned, how advanced of a meditation practitioner you are, you're going to have distracting thoughts. You're going to have things that are taking you a couple miles down that muddy road. But how quick can you recognize that and turn that around rather than carrying it on for the rest of the day?
mm. Yeah, yeah, nicely put. It's really interesting to see how you take that and turn it into something positive, because what I said can very easily be seen as a negative view on, well, something that's happy, right? Because obviously happiness is happy. Um, and it's interesting to hear you flip on its head, and it shows a lot about how meditation is so important and how it is a lifestyle, and it can really, you can sort of sponge and absorb things and reflect on them and be positive and spread that light like you are, and it's really interesting. Um, so how do you use yielding in like your day-to-day life? Like let's say you've not got any classes on or anything like that where you're teaching people in just a normal day-to-day life. Like how do you use that?
Anytime you come up against resistance in a conversation or even with your own interpersonal conflicts, you can use the idea of yielding to positively direct it with the least amount of resistance. And so it can be used, with anything you're doing physically, mentally, emotionally. I mean, it's just can be applied to anything you do.
Okay. I think that's a really good point to wrap up on. Sort of just one more thing. What is your definition of success?
I was told once from an old teacher of mine that you want to create a life and not make a living. And I think finding something that you're passionate about and being able to follow that path is where true success is at. No matter how much money you make, it's the idea of having a purpose, having a passion, and doing something good in the world, and I think that that's the most important thing.
Yeah, well put. Yeah, I really like that definition is beautiful. It really shows how you're practicing what you preach. It's great. Yeah, and it's lovely to have you on today, Jeff. I think that's a good point to wrap up on. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for anybody that might be interested in getting a free copy of my book, you can go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book and we'll send you a free copy. You just pay for shipping and handling. And if you're interested in checking out kind of what we're doing, also at theyieldingwarrior.com, you could try out our online program and learn how to start incorporating the meditative practice into your life and try it out for a couple weeks and kind of see what's there and what's available to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.